Hello, everyone. Tonight, we're settling into something that's both tender and a little unsettling. Those moments in life when you suddenly realize the net you thought would always be beneath you is full of holes. I'm talking about the quiet, unexpected day when it hits you that you can't rely on family the way you once did. The calls aren't as frequent. The visits are shorter. The help you assumed would be there sometimes just isn't. You feel it most on those long afternoons when the sun seems to move slower, and you catch yourself thinking, if I really needed someone right now, who would I call? And the answer, if you're honest, isn't as clear as it used to be. That realization can be a sharp one, like waking up to find the world has shifted just a little while you were asleep. You might not survive this, not if you keep expecting others to carry you without learning how to carry yourself. That's the truth. No one wants to put in the greeting card version of aging. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do here. I'd also love to know where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you right now. Drop that in the comments below. Now turn off the lights, maybe turn on a fan for some gentle background noise, and let's begin our journey tonight together. The day I understood this truth for myself, I was sitting at the kitchen table, staring at a stack of mail. Not bills, just the usual. Grocery flyers, a dentist reminder, a handwritten note from a friend who still likes using stamps. But it was the silence that got to me. I realized I hadn't spoken to anyone that day, and no one had checked in. I wasn't angry about it, but I felt the ground shift a little under my feet. I used to think family was the automatic safety net. You're born into it, you grow up in it, you give to it. And eventually, when life bends your spine and slows your steps, it gives back. That's the story we tell ourselves. But in reality, life doesn't always follow that neat exchange. Kids move across the country. Siblings have their own doctor appointments. Grandkids are busy chasing their own beginnings. And it's not betrayal, it's life. Here's something age teaches you. The measure of your strength isn't how many people are around you when things are easy. It's how steady you can stay when you're the only one in the room. There's a kind of peace in knowing that even if the phone stays silent, you can still get up, make your tea, water your plants, and keep the day moving. I've met people in their 80s who embody this in the most unassuming ways. Like Margaret, a retired nurse who once told me, "If you wait for someone to make you feel useful, you'll be waiting forever. Do something small for yourself every day. Fold your laundry, write a postcard, polish your shoes, and you'll never feel completely idle." That's not just good advice, it's survival advice. It's the kind of wisdom you don't learn until you've had a few decades to watch the tides of relationships roll in and out. And while some may debate whether independence is truly possible in old age, after all, we all need help sometimes, I believe self-reliance is less about never leaning on others, and more about knowing you can stand on your own until help arrives. The quirky thing is, once you start leaning into this self-reliance, you notice small details you used to overlook. The way your house smells when the windows are open in spring. How the wood on the kitchen chair has worn perfectly to fit you. Even the sound of your own footsteps feels different, more grounded somehow. And here's the real secret. When you stop expecting other people to be your constant source of comfort, you free them to simply be in your life without the weight of obligation. That shift changes relationships. It makes conversations lighter, visits warmer, and connections more about choice than duty. That afternoon at my kitchen table, I didn't pick up the phone. I didn't sigh or wish for company. I stood up, poured myself a glass of water, and decided to take a short walk. Not to escape the silence, but to make peace with it. And somewhere between the third and fourth block, I realized that what I was feeling wasn't abandonment. It was an invitation. An invitation to build my days in a way that didn't depend on someone else's schedule or mood. It's not a perfect philosophy. There will still be lonely days. But there's a comfort in knowing that even if the net under you has gaps, you've learned how to land on your feet. And maybe, just maybe, that's the first step to not just surviving, but living fully in this stage of life. There's a certain magic in being able to get up from a chair without gripping the armrests like you're about to launch into orbit. It's not something you think about much in your younger years. You just stand up and go. But somewhere past 70, you start realizing that the ability to move freely isn't just about muscles and joints. It's about freedom, dignity, and the quiet confidence that you can still navigate your own life. I've seen people underestimate this. They'll say, "Oh, I'm just a little stiff," or "I'll start walking again when the weather's better." And then one day, the little stiffness turns into hesitation at the top of the stairs, or second-guessing whether you can carry that laundry basket without tipping over. That's when the fear creeps in. Not of falling, but of becoming the kind of person who has to ask for help every time they want to move from one room to the next. One of the best pieces of wisdom I ever heard came from an old gym coach of mine, back when I thought warm-up meant sitting on the bench until practice started. He said, "If you stop moving, you stop owning your body. Someone else will have to own it for you." At the time, I rolled my eyes. Now I'd frame it and hang it on the wall. It's worth debating how much mobility is enough. Some say, as long as you can shuffle to the kitchen, you're fine. Others insist on hitting a certain step count every day. My take? Mobility is enough when it lets you live your day without constantly calculating what you can and can't do. I think about Harold, a 78-year-old I met at a park in Florida. He walks with a cane, slow and deliberate, every morning. Rain or shine. I asked him why he's so consistent, and he smiled like I'd just asked him why he breathes. "Because the moment I stop walking," he said, "is the moment I start waiting for someone to help me. I don't want to wait. I want to live." And he does. He still drives to the grocery store, still visits friends, still climbs the 3 steps to his porch without complaint. His mobility isn't perfect, but it's his. And that ownership gives him peace. Here's the quirky thing. Mobility doesn't just help your body, it feeds your mind. When you can get up and go, even if it's just to the garden gate, you're more likely to say yes to things. Yes to the neighbor's barbecue. Yes to a walk through the farmer's market. Yes to sitting on a park bench just to watch the world go by. It's like having a key to more rooms in the house of life. Of course, protecting mobility after 70 isn't about joining a marathon or taking up parkour. It's about maintenance. Stretch when you wake up. Walk 15 minutes a day. Use resistance bands or light weights to remind your muscles they still have a job. Even something as simple as balancing on one foot while you brush your teeth can make a difference. It sounds silly, until you realize how much balance matters when you're stepping into the shower or navigating a curb. There's an old saying that motion is lotion, and while it might sound like something you'd see on a novelty mug, it's true. Your joints are like door hinges. They stay smoother when they're used regularly. Let them sit too long, and they creak. Sometimes I catch myself wondering what would happen if I couldn't move as freely as I do now. And the thought doesn't scare me as much as it used to, because I've seen that even with limitations, people find ways to adapt. The real danger isn't a weaker knee or slower stride, it's giving up on the idea that you can improve. That's when you shrink, not in height, but in spirit. Harold once told me, "Every step I take is an argument against the idea that I'm done." I think about that on the days my legs feel heavy or my back aches. Because the truth is, no matter who's around you, your legs are the one pair of friends you take everywhere. If you take care of them, they'll keep showing up for you. So if you're feeling stiff or cautious these days, start small. Take the long way to the mailbox. March in place while the kettle boils. Add one extra lap around the living room before you sit down. Every small bit of movement is a deposit into the bank of independence, and trust me, you'll want that account full when you need it most. Family might not always be there to walk beside you, but strong legs, steady balance, and a body you can trust? That's a companion you can rely on every single day. Money, at a certain age, becomes less about ambition and more about peace. In your 20s and 30s, you think of it as a tool to build a life. In your 70s, you start seeing it as a tool to protect the life you already have. And I've learned something. How much you have isn't nearly as important as how simple it is to manage. I used to think financial independence meant having a big enough bank balance that you could do anything you wanted. Now I know it means being able to sleep at night without running numbers in your head. It's not about abundance, it's about clarity. The complicated truth, and people will argue this, is that financial stress doesn't care whether you have a little or a lot. I've seen folks with 7 figures in the bank pacing their kitchens because they can't keep track of where their money is going. And I've seen widows living on modest pensions who smile through the month because every bill is paid and nothing is hanging over their heads. Lorraine, my neighbor, is the second type. She's 74, a retired librarian with no children and no one to help her manage things. When her husband passed, she told me she was drowning in paperwork, multiple credit cards, a mortgage she didn't need, subscriptions she forgot she'd signed up for. I used to be afraid to check the mail, she admitted. Now I open it with a cup of tea. Her transformation was simple but powerful. She downsized to a smaller home, cut her bills in half, and kept just one credit card. She even started a freedom fund jar in her kitchen. $10 here, $20 there. It's not about the amount. It's about the reminder that she is in control. I've borrowed her philosophy. There's a strange weight that lifts when your finances fit neatly on a single sheet of paper. No more scattered logins. No more, I'll get to that later piles of envelopes. Just a clean list of what comes in, what goes out, and what's left over. It's funny. There's a side effect to simplifying your money that no one talks about. It makes you more willing to say yes to small pleasures. A nice lunch with a friend, a new book without guilt, a bouquet of flowers for your table. You're not constantly calculating whether you can afford it because you already know the answer. Here's a quirky fact I stumbled across. Older adults with straightforward finances report significantly lower stress levels, even compared to wealthier peers with more complex accounts. It's as if the brain just rests easier when it doesn't have to manage a circus of numbers. That doesn't mean you don't plan for the unexpected. Quite the opposite. You prepare so well that surprises don't feel like ambushes. A car repair? Covered. A higher heating bill in winter? Already accounted for. The security doesn't come from perfection. It comes from the absence of chaos. Some people resist this idea because they equate simplifying with losing control. They want to hold on to every account, every option, every just in case. But the truth is, the simpler your setup, the more in control you actually are. You're not waiting for your son to explain the bank app or asking your daughter to call the utility company for you. You can handle it yourself. Lorraine put it best. I may not be rich, but I'm never confused. I think that's the goal, not to win some invisible contest of net worth, but to live a life where your money quietly supports you instead of demanding constant attention. If your financial life feels like a tangled ball of yarn right now, start by pulling one thread. Cancel something you don't use. Close an account you forgot you had. Write down your income and expenses in one place. Do it not because someone told you to, but because clarity is its own kind of wealth, and when the next unexpected envelope lands in your mailbox, you'll open it, not with dread, but with the quiet confidence that you've got this. That's worth more than any number on a bank statement. I've always believed that the strongest support system you can have after 70 isn't a person, it's a rhythm. And the easiest way to build that rhythm is through a daily health routine. Not a flashy one, not something you'd see on a fitness influencer's feed. I'm talking about the kind of routine that's so simple, so ingrained, you could do it half asleep, and sometimes you will. The trick is to make it boring. Yes, boring. Because boring is repeatable. Boring is sustainable. A 20-minute walk every morning. A tall glass of water before breakfast. Taking your medications at the exact same time each day. These aren't headline-grabbing habits, but they're the ones that keep you steady when everything else feels unpredictable. The academic debate here is whether routines make you rigid or resilient. Personally, I think they make you resilient. I'd rather be the person whose body and mind are anchored by small, dependable actions than the one who wakes up each day wondering, what should I do for my health today? That indecision eats more energy than the exercise itself. Frank, an 81-year-old former electrician I know, is the perfect example. Every morning at 6, he makes a cup of green tea, does 15 minutes of chair stretches, takes his meds, and then walks the block. Rain, shine, or Florida drizzle, as he calls it. When I asked why he's so disciplined, he said, "It's not about exercise. It's about telling myself every morning that I still matter." There's something powerful in that. Routines aren't just about the body. They're about identity. They remind you daily that you're still participating in your own life. I've noticed a quirky side effect. When you have a consistent health routine, you need less external help. You remember your pills without reminders. You move with more stability, which means fewer falls. You know what you're eating and when, so your energy doesn't tank halfway through the day. It's like paving a path in a foggy forest. Your feet just know where to go. Of course, some days will be harder. There will be mornings when your knees ache, your energy dips, or the weather is so bad even the dog refuses to go outside. That's fine. The point isn't perfection. It's persistence. Swap your walk for gentle stretching. Do a few deep breaths by the window. Drink an extra glass of water. The action matters more than the scale of it. I keep a little checklist by the kettle. Stretch, hydrate, move, take meds. There's a small satisfaction in ticking each one off. Not because I'm chasing some fitness goal, but because I'm keeping a promise to myself. Here's something I've learned with age. Health routines aren't about avoiding illness entirely. That's impossible. They're about building a base so that when illness comes, you recover faster. They're your insurance policy for resilience. If you've let your routine slide, don't punish yourself. Just pick one thing. Walk after lunch, drink more water, stretch before bed. And do it until it feels like brushing your teeth. Automatic, unremarkable, but utterly essential. Because when you show up for your health every day, you're not just keeping your body in motion, you're telling yourself you're still worth the effort. And that's a message you can't afford to skip. If there's one thing I've learned in my later years, it's that emotional resilience is worth more than any retirement account. Because the truth is, you can have a healthy body and a tidy bank balance, but if your emotions crumble at every setback, you'll spend your days on shaky ground. Emotional resilience isn't about pretending you're fine when you're not. It's about being able to say, "This hurts, but I can handle it." It's the quiet steadiness that lets you sit in an empty room and not feel hollow, to walk through a hard day without it swallowing you whole. The funny part? Some people think resilience means never feeling sadness at all. That's like thinking the best swimmers never get wet. Real resilience means you let the wave hit you, and then you come back up for air. Eileen, a 77-year-old widow I know, has a small ritual every night. She lights a candle, not because she's religious, but because it marks the end of the day. "Some nights I cry, some nights I smile," she told me. "But I always tell myself, you made it through today." It's simple, but it's her way of reminding herself that the bad days don't win just by showing up. There's some academic debate over whether resilience is something you're born with or something you build. I'm firmly in the you build it camp. Every time you face something hard and come out the other side, you're training that muscle. It's like doing emotional push-ups. No one sees the work, but they notice when you're able to carry more without breaking. Here's a quirky fact I came across. Older adults who actively practice gratitude, writing down even one good thing each day, show lower stress levels and better heart health. Turns out, your mind and your heart are in more of a partnership than we give them credit for. But resilience isn't built only in the big moments of loss or crisis. It's also in the small disappointments, when a friend cancels lunch, when the family forgets to call on your birthday, when the weather ruins your picnic plans. You can either let those chip away at your joy, or you can decide they're just background noise to the bigger story you're living. For me, resilience has meant learning to hold both joy and sadness without letting either cancel the other out. On the same day, I've been able to miss someone deeply and still laugh at a silly TV show. That's the balance. You let life be layered, not all or nothing. If you want to build your own, start with awareness. Notice how you talk to yourself in hard moments. Are you piling on blame or offering yourself patience? Do you give yourself the same kindness you'd give a friend? Small changes in your inner voice can make you far more stable when life shakes the table. And when you start to feel wobbly, remember this. Resilience doesn't mean you don't lean on others sometimes. It means you know you can stand back up even if no one's there to grab your hand. Because in the end, that steadiness, that quiet confidence in your own heart, is what will carry you farther than anything else. Somewhere along the way, I realized that living without a personal code of values is like trying to sail without a compass. You might still move, but you're at the mercy of every wind that blows. And at 70 or 80, when the currents of life can shift fast and unexpectedly, that's not a position you want to be in. A personal code isn't something you write on a sticky note and forget. It's the thread that runs through every choice you make, the quiet reminder of who you are, no matter what happens around you. It's not about impressing anyone or following someone else's rulebook. It's about answering, honestly, what do I stand for? Howard, a man I met at a senior center years ago, summed it up perfectly. I have 5 rules, he said, holding up his hand like he was counting blessings. I speak the truth. I don't waste food. I always return a borrowed thing. I forgive fast, and I sleep with a clear conscience. Then he smiled. That's it. That's my map. Some might argue that a personal code is just another way of boxing yourself in. I disagree. If anything, it's freeing. When you know your own boundaries and priorities, you don't waste energy on endless decision-making or chasing approval. You already know what right looks like for you. Here's the quirky part. I've noticed that people with a strong personal code tend to have fewer regrets. It's not that they've never made mistakes. Of course they have. It's that they can live with their choices because those choices matched their values at the time. For me, my personal code has shifted over the years. In my 30s, it was about ambition and proving myself. Now it's about kindness, honesty, and keeping life simple enough to enjoy. And once you define yours, you start to see it in action in the smallest ways: how you greet a stranger, whether you let gossip pass you by, how you handle an unexpected bill. The beauty of a personal code is that it doesn't depend on anyone else showing up. Your kids might forget to call, your friends might move away, but your values walk into every day with you. They give you something to hold on to when everything else feels uncertain. There's an ongoing debate about whether values are learned or innate. I think they're a mix. You're born with certain leanings, but life experience shapes the rest. And the older you get, the more you realize that you get to choose which ones you carry forward. If you haven't put yours into words yet, try this. Write down 3 things you'd want someone to say about you when you're not in the room. Chances are, those are your core values. Then, start living like you're protecting that description every day. Because at the end of it all, your personal code becomes your anchor. When storms come, and they will, you won't be tossed around wondering which way to turn. You'll already know. If there's one thing that keeps the lights on in my mind, it's curiosity. Not the kind that has you prying into your neighbor's business. Though, let's be honest, we all like a little porch gossip now and then. But the kind that keeps your brain reaching, stretching, learning. The world has a way of shrinking as we get older. Same streets, same routines, same conversations. And while there's comfort in the familiar, too much sameness can make the days blend together until you can't quite remember if something happened last week or last month. Curiosity is what cuts through that fog. I've heard people say, "Oh, I'm too old to learn new things." I always tell them, "No, you're just out of practice." The brain doesn't have an expiration date. It just gets dusty if you stop using it. There's research and some academic debate that suggests learning in later years can slow cognitive decline. Others say it's not about slowing anything, but about giving the mind reasons to stay engaged. Either way, the result is the same: a sharper, livelier you. For me, it's been small, almost silly things. I once spent an entire week trying to learn how to make a perfect French omelet. I burned more eggs than I care to admit, but by the end, I could do it with my eyes half closed. And every time I made one, I felt that little spark. The same one I got when I was 10 years old and figured out how to ride a bike without wobbling. A quirky fact: one of my friends, Miriam, took up learning Italian at 79. She told me it wasn't because she planned to travel, but because she wanted her brain to feel like it had new shoes. I think that's perfect. The beautiful thing about lifelong curiosity is that it doesn't have to be grand. You don't have to enroll in college or climb a mountain, read about a culture you know nothing about. Ask your grandchild how their video game works. Try a recipe from a country you've never visited. It's not about mastery. It's about the joy of, I didn't know that. The more curious you are, the more connected you feel to the world. And here's the part people overlook. Curiosity makes you more interesting to yourself. You become your own company, your own source of novelty, which is invaluable in later life, when you can't always rely on others for stimulation. If you've been feeling a little mentally stuck, pick one thing, anything, that makes you tilt your head and think, "I wonder." Then follow that thread. You might be surprised where it leads you, because curiosity isn't just about keeping your mind young. It's about keeping your spirit wide open, even when the world around you tries to close in. The older I get, the more I realize that friendship is less about how long you've known someone and more about how their presence feels in your life. At this stage, I don't have the energy for relationships that drain me, no matter how much history we share. I want connections that feel like a gentle breeze on a warm day, refreshing, natural, and never forced. There's a shift that happens as you age. In your younger years, you collect friends like souvenirs, work friends, school friends, neighbors, acquaintances from the gym. You keep them because, well, that's what you do. But as the decades pass, you start realizing that not every friendship needs to make the journey with you. The keepers are the ones who leave you lighter after you've spent time together, not heavier. I remember my friend Thomas, who I met at a local art class in my late 60s. We'd paint in almost complete silence for an hour. And then, when we were packing up, he'd say something so quietly insightful it would stay with me for days. "You don't have to talk much to be heard," he told me once, and I've carried that with me. It's a reminder that friendship doesn't always require constant chatter. It requires connection. There's an ongoing debate about whether deep friendships in later life are more about emotional intimacy or shared activities. I think it's both. Shared experiences give you something to laugh about, but emotional intimacy gives you something to lean on. Without that balance, you either have a buddy to do things with, but no one to talk to about the hard stuff, or someone who will listen, but never step outside their comfort zone with you. Here's a quirky observation I've made. When you focus on friendships that actually feed your energy, you find yourself healthier, not just in mood, but physically. There's research showing that positive social interactions can lower blood pressure and even boost immune function. I don't need a medical journal to believe that. My own body tells me after a good afternoon with the right people. That's not to say every friendship needs to be deep and life-changing. Some can be light and casual, like the woman I chat with while waiting for my coffee. She doesn't know my life story, and I don't know hers. But our short exchanges make those mornings brighter. If you're looking to build or refresh your circle, start where you already feel most yourself. Whether it's a hobby group, a walking club, or even an online book discussion. You'll find the people who match your energy there, and those connections will grow naturally without forcing them. At this point in life, friendships aren't about quantity or even frequency. They're about quality. It's the people who make you feel seen, respected, and unhurried. The ones who leave you feeling like you've been reminded of your best self. Because in the end, friendship in later years is a kind of quiet medicine. And when you choose the right doses, it can keep you steady in ways you never expected. Home takes on a different meaning when you're older. It's no longer just the place you store your things. It becomes the stage for most of your life. The walls see you more often than anyone else does, so they ought to make you feel safe, comfortable, and, above all, capable. In my younger years, I thought of home improvement as adding a new sofa or a fresh coat of paint. Now, it's about making the space work for me so I can stay independent. That might mean installing better lighting so I'm not squinting at the mail, or rearranging the kitchen so my most used items are within easy reach. It's less about aesthetics and more about creating a place that supports my life, not one that challenges it. There's some debate in design circles about whether making a home senior-friendly means sacrificing style. I say absolutely not. Function and beauty can and should coexist. A sturdy, well-placed chair can be just as elegant as a delicate one you're afraid to sit in. I once visited my friend Claire, who had just turned 80. Her home was a perfect example of balance. Bright rugs for warmth, wide walkways for easy movement, grab bars in the bathroom that matched the brushed nickel fixtures. She told me, "If I have to touch it every day, it should feel like it belongs here." That stuck with me. A quirky fact. Certain colors, especially soft blues and greens, are linked to reduced stress and lower blood pressure. So yes, that pale teal wall in my bedroom isn't just pretty. It's practical. The safety aspect can't be overstated. A loose rug or poorly lit hallway might not seem like a big deal, until it is. Falls are one of the biggest threats to independence in older age, and your home can either increase or decrease that risk. I've made peace with the fact that I'm no longer 20 and have quietly retired a few decorative hazards over the years. Comfort, too, plays a bigger role than I expected. A supportive chair in the right spot can turn into your favorite reading nook. A soft blanket within arm's reach can make a quiet evening feel like a hug. The scent of fresh bread or brewed tea lingering in the kitchen can make a house feel alive, even if no one else is there. If you've been putting off small changes, like better lighting, safer storage, or adding a chair in the hallway for quick rests, consider them investments in your freedom. Because the easier your home is to navigate, the less you have to rely on someone else to help you do it. Home in the later chapters of life, should be your ally. A place that doesn't just shelter you, but actively helps you live the way you want to live. And when you get that right, stepping through your own front door feels like a deep exhale, a quiet reassurance that you're in the one place built exactly for you. Some people think hobbies are just a way to pass the time, but at this stage of life, I see them as lifelines. They give the day shape. They give the mind a reason to lean forward instead of drift. Without them, the hours can feel like they're just dissolving. When I was working, my hobbies lived in the corners of my life. I'd paint a little on weekends or bake when I had time. But now, they've moved to center stage. They're not filler. They're the spine that holds the day upright. The beauty of hobbies is that they don't need to be productive in the traditional sense. You don't have to sell your knitted scarves or hang your watercolors in a gallery. The value is in the doing. There's an academic debate about whether hobbies are better for mental health when they have a tangible output or when they're purely experiential. I think both have their place. Some days, I like ending up with a loaf of bread or a finished puzzle. Other days, I'm happy just to have spent an hour humming along to music while I putter in the garden. One quirky fact I stumbled across. Older adults who regularly engage in creative hobbies, like painting, woodworking, or even playing music, are less likely to experience feelings of isolation. The activity itself becomes a form of silent conversation with the world. My friend Lillian, for example, spends her mornings making intricate birdhouses. She doesn't sell them. She doesn't even give most of them away. They line the shelves in her workshop like a tiny, colorful neighborhood. I like knowing I can create something that didn't exist yesterday, she says. It makes me feel like time isn't just passing, it's producing. That's exactly it. A good hobby makes the hours tangible. It turns Wednesday into the day I tried that new lemon tart recipe, or the afternoon I finished the blue scarf. It anchors the days in memory, so they don't all blur into one long stretch of beige. If you've let your hobbies slide, I'd say start small. Pick something you've always been curious about, or something you enjoyed years ago but drifted away from. Keep the stakes low. No one's grading you. This is about enjoyment, not achievement. And here's the best part. Hobbies also make you more interesting to yourself. On a quiet evening, you can look at what you've made, learned, or explored, and feel a little spark of pride. That spark is a reminder that your days are still rich, still textured, still yours. In the end, hobbies are more than things to do. They're threads that keep the fabric of your life from unraveling. And if you choose the right ones, they can turn even the quietest days into something worth remembering. It took me years to understand that no is not a rejection. It's a form of self-preservation. In my younger days, I said yes to everything. Yes to extra shifts. Yes to hosting holiday dinners. Yes to favors I didn't have the energy to give. I wore my yeses like badges of honor, thinking they made me generous. In truth, they often left me exhausted and quietly resentful. Somewhere in my 70s, I started seeing no for what it really is, a boundary. And boundaries aren't walls to keep people out. They're fences with gates you control. They're what protect your time, your peace, and your health. There's an academic debate about whether older adults withdraw socially because they truly want to, or because they feel pushed out. I think, in many cases, it's neither. It's that we finally get picky about where our energy goes. When your days feel more precious, you stop spending them on things that don't matter to you. I remember one winter when a neighbor kept asking me to watch her dog while she traveled. The first 2 times, I agreed, even though it meant trudging over in the cold twice a day. By the 3rd request, I felt my shoulders tighten before she even finished the sentence. So I said, kindly but firmly, "I'm sorry, I can't this time." And here's the surprising part. She understood. The world didn't collapse, and our neighborly chats stayed just as warm. Here's a quirky fact. People who practice saying no report higher life satisfaction, not just because they avoid unwanted tasks, but because the act of choosing reinforces their sense of autonomy. No doesn't have to be blunt or harsh. It can be soft and clear. "I'd love to, but I can't take that on right now." "That sounds fun, but I need some time to rest." "Thanks for thinking of me, but I'm not the right person for this." The real power of saying no is that it makes your yeses mean more. When you do agree to something, it's because you truly want to, not because you felt cornered. People can feel the difference. If you're new to setting boundaries, start with one small refusal this week. Say no to something minor, like a phone call when you're in the middle of your favorite show, or an errand that isn't urgent. Notice how it feels to protect that sliver of your day. The more you practice, the easier it gets. And the more your life starts to reflect what you actually want instead of what you've been talked into. Because at this stage, your time and energy are like rare coins. Spend them where they matter, and don't be afraid to close the gate when you need to. One of the most empowering lessons I've learned with age is this. No one will ever care about your health as much as you do. Not your doctor, not your children, not even the most attentive caregiver. That's not cynicism. It's reality. And that's why becoming your own health advocate is a form of self-defense. When I was younger, I'd sit in a doctor's office and nod along, even if I didn't understand half of what was being said. I figured, they know best. But over time, I realized that knowing best doesn't mean knowing you. Medical professionals see dozens of patients a day. Only you live in your body full-time. If something feels off, you're the first and sometimes only person who can say it. There's a bit of academic debate on whether patients over 70 tend to be overtreated or undertreated. The truth is, both happen. And the deciding factor often comes down to how actively the patient participates in their own care. My friend Arthur, for instance, is 82 and has a folder for every doctor's visit. Inside are lists of questions, medication updates, and notes from previous appointments. "If I don't write it down, I forget it," he told me. "And if I forget it, they can't help me." His visits are shorter, more productive, and far less stressful because he walks in prepared. Here's a quirky fact. Older adults who keep a simple health journal, just a few notes on symptoms, exercise, or mood, often spot patterns before their doctors do. Sometimes, those patterns are the key to catching an issue early. Being your own advocate doesn't mean distrusting your healthcare team. It means being an active part of it. Ask questions until you understand the answer. If a term confuses you, say so. If a prescription makes you feel worse, speak up. And don't be afraid to seek a second opinion. Good doctors welcome it because it means you're taking your health seriously. It also means knowing your priorities. For some, the goal is aggressive treatment. For others, it's quality of life over quantity. There's no wrong answer, only the one that aligns with your values. But no one can make that choice for you unless you make it clear. If you're not sure where to start, begin with 3 basics. Keep an up-to-date list of your medications. Write down any new or unusual symptoms, even if they seem small. Bring someone you trust to appointments, not to speak for you, but to help remember what was said. Because at the end of the day, your health is your responsibility. And when you step into that role, you're not just protecting your body, you're protecting your independence. There's a certain comfort in rituals, the kind of small, repeated acts that seem almost invisible until you realize how much they anchor you. They don't have to be grand or ceremonial. In fact, the simpler they are, the more they seem to work their quiet magic. When I was still working, my mornings were frantic. Coffee gulped on the way out the door, shoes half-tied, keys misplaced. These days, my mornings have a rhythm that feels like exhaling. I wake up, stretch in bed, open the curtains, and let the light in. Then I make tea, always in the same mug, and sit by the window for a few minutes before the day begins. It's not glamorous, but it steadies me. Some people dismiss rituals as pointless routine, but there's an ongoing academic debate about whether they're actually a form of psychological grounding. I'm firmly on the "they work" side. Rituals give your mind familiar landmarks in a world that's constantly shifting. Eileen, my friend who lights a candle every night, once told me, "It's my way of closing the book on the day. No matter how messy it was, that flame means I've made it through." I think that's why rituals can be so powerful. They tell your brain, this is the moment to let go. Here's a quirky fact. Research shows that repetitive, intentional actions, like making the bed every morning, can reduce anxiety by giving the mind a sense of control over at least one part of life. That control, however small, can ripple outward. Your rituals can be anything: reading a poem before bed, watering your plants while humming the same tune, taking a walk at the same time each afternoon. What matters is the consistency and the meaning you attach to it. For me, it's also seasonal. In winter, I bake bread on Sundays, not because I need bread, but because the smell fills the house with warmth. In summer, I end the day sitting on the porch, even if just for 5 minutes, to watch the last light fade. These are small things, but they become emotional anchors. If you don't have a ritual right now, start with something you already enjoy and do it with a little more intention. Make it yours. Mark the moment so your brain knows. This is part of how I take care of myself, because in a life where so much is uncertain, rituals are the stitches that hold the fabric together. They remind you that you are still here, still moving through time with purpose, even in the quietest of hours. I've heard people say that aging is just a slow decline, like a candle burning down to the stub. I've never liked that image. I prefer to think of it as evolution, a steady reshaping into something wiser, sharper in some ways, softer in others. And like any kind of evolution, it's not always comfortable, but it's rarely without purpose. The older I get, the more I see that aging is less about losing things and more about trading them in. You give up a bit of speed for more patience. You lose the appetite for endless noise, but gain a taste for deeper conversations. You might not climb ladders anymore, but you climb into understanding in ways your younger self never could. There's an academic debate about whether this reframing, seeing aging as transformation rather than decline, actually changes health outcomes. I think it does. When you believe you're still capable of growth, you behave differently. You try new things. You recover from setbacks faster. You stay engaged. My friend Miriam, who learned Italian at 79, just to give her brain new shoes, as she put it, is a perfect example. She told me, "If I keep learning, I can't feel old in the way people mean it." And she's right. Curiosity and adaptation are antidotes to stagnation. Here's a quirky fact. Studies show that older adults with a positive view of aging live, on average, 7.5 years longer than those who see it negatively. 7.5 years, that's a lot of mornings, a lot of sunsets, a lot of chances to keep evolving. For me, evolution has meant becoming more intentional with my energy. I'm quicker to notice what doesn't serve me, and slower to give my attention away. I still try new things. Recently, I learned how to grow herbs on my windowsill. It's not revolutionary, but every time I clip fresh basil, I feel a little thrill of having added something new to my life. The beauty of seeing aging as evolution is that it invites you to ask, what am I becoming now? Not what have I lost, but what am I shaping into? That question keeps the horizon open instead of closing in. If you've been feeling like your best days are behind you, try flipping the thought. Your most you days might be right now, because this version of you has seen more, felt more, survived more, and all of that experience has shaped you into someone who knows how to walk forward even when the road changes under your feet. In the end, aging isn't about burning down to nothing. It's about burning into something else entirely, and you get to choose what that is. I used to think being alone was the same as being lonely. Back then, I filled my calendar just to keep the silence away. Coffee dates I didn't really want, volunteer shifts I wasn't excited about, even phone calls that left me more drained than before. I was terrified of what I might hear if I was left alone with my own thoughts for too long. Somewhere along the line, that changed. Maybe it was gradual, like the way you notice the days getting longer in spring. Or maybe it was one specific moment. The afternoon I sat in my kitchen with a cup of tea, no music, no television, just the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the house. Instead of feeling restless, I felt steady. It's not that I stopped valuing people. I still cherish the warmth of a good conversation, the ease of sitting next to someone who knows me well. But I no longer need constant company to feel complete. My own presence has stopped being something to escape. There's an ongoing academic debate about whether humans are truly wired for solitude, or if it's something we have to learn. I think it's both. We're social creatures by design, but we're also capable of becoming our own best companions. Like any skill, it just takes practice. One quirky fact: studies have shown that older adults who are comfortable spending time alone often report higher levels of life satisfaction because they choose their social interactions intentionally rather than out of habit or fear of being alone. For me, embracing solitude meant creating little pockets of joy in my own company. I read books out loud just to hear the words. I cook a nice meal for myself and set the table as if company's coming. I take walks where I don't have to keep pace with anyone, stopping to look at whatever catches my eye. This isn't about shutting the world out. It's about knowing that if, for whatever reason, the world can't join you today, you'll still be okay. More than okay. You might even thrive. And here's the surprising thing. The more I've learned to enjoy my own company, the better my relationships have become. There's no desperation in them, no sense of leaning too hard on someone else to keep me afloat. I meet people as a whole person, not a half looking for the other half. If you've been afraid of solitude, start small. Spend 10 minutes in quiet without reaching for your phone. Take yourself out for coffee. Listen to the sound of your own footsteps on a walk. Learn to notice the difference between silence and emptiness. Because when you can stand strong in your own company, you stop worrying so much about who's around. You carry your own steady ground with you wherever you go, and that's a kind of freedom no one can take away. Conclusion. The hours are softer now. They don't rush me the way they used to, and I no longer feel like I have to chase them down. I've built a life where the strongest supports are not people I have to depend on, but habits, values, and choices that stay with me no matter who walks in or out. The house is quiet, but it's a friendly quiet, the kind that wraps around you instead of pressing in. My legs still carry me where I want to go. My money is simple enough to manage without worry. My days have structure, my heart has resilience, and my mind has space to keep learning. The people in my life bring me joy, not obligation, and my home greets me like an ally. I have small rituals that keep the edges of my days from fraying, and a view of aging that feels less like an ending and more like a slow, deliberate transformation. I have hobbies that give color to my hours. boundaries that protect my peace, and a voice in my own healthcare that keeps me in the driver's seat. Most of all, I've learned that I'm never truly alone, because I've become my own steady companion. There's a deep comfort in that, the kind that seeps into your bones and whispers, "You're safe here." So as we close tonight, I hope you feel it too, that quiet confidence that comes from building your own foundation. Because when you stand on it, you don't have to fear the ground shifting under you. You carry your home, your balance, your peace inside you. And now, as the light fades and the air cools, let that thought settle in. Let it linger like the last note of a favorite song. End of script. Good night.